wasn't going to stand on this, and I have a story. So, years ago, I was with the Highlands Playhouse when it was a professional theater. And I was in a play over there called Tintypes, and I was playing a character called Anna Held, who is a Ziegfeld Folly girl. Yes, I am too short for it, but I did it anyway. and so one night, it was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was opening night, because I had not tried on the costume until that night. They threw me in something right at the end. And it was the kind of thing where, this was a scene where two of our cast members, men, carried this heavy screen out, and I snuck behind it, carrying the stool, which I was supposed to stand on, and then go, voila! What I didn't realize as I was standing on my dress, it was a strapless gown, and the whole front, and I had no brassiere on, and the whole front fell down.
Did you get a standing ovation?
You know, I did. So when Michael brought out the stool, all my worst memories came up with it, but here I am, nevertheless. I'm glad to be speaking with you. Guys, I want to start out by thanking each and every one of you. We have had something remarkable happen. When this book started hitting when we had launch day, which was on the 12th, I was bright and early up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and my publisher was too, and we were talking, and I was number 1,200 on the Amazon list. 1,200. Nobody had heard of me, nobody had heard of the book, and within, I think, a day or two, no, within by the end of that afternoon, we were number 600. Pretty good, right? And by the next night, we were number 20 on hot new releases. Wow. But that has to do with you all. I mean, I'm glad it's a good book. I'm thrilled, you know, but you guys just really hopped in there and helped me. And thank you so much for doing so. If you've ever been down to Silva, Chris has the most divine bookstore. Do you all like bookstores as much as I do? I love wandering through bookstores. He has a cat. What's your cat's name?
Cedric.
Oh, Cedric, black and white cat. So it's got all the elements that I love the best about bookstores. You know, I just love Chris's bookstore. And he's kind enough to carry this book for me. He is competing, of course, with Amazon as well. I mean, you know, this is a big deal.
I bet in 90 minutes it's going to top the City Lights bestsellers. In about 90 minutes, I think your book is going to top the City Lights book.
Well, how wonderful. I am delighted. I grew up here. And to me, this has always been the most magical place in the world, this Highlands Cashiers Plateau. I grew up when all the old hotels were here. Highlands Manor, Lee's Inn, King's Inn, they've all burned down now except for Old Edward's Inn and Highlands Inn. But I grew up in those hotels, and it was really a wonderful childhood. Much of that childhood informs the story and the characters, not only in Blood Mountain, but probably in everything I'll ever do, you know? Even though the stories don't necessarily make it in the book, like being covered with leeches when I went skinny dipping in Harris Lake with a bad little girl whose father owned King's Inn. My first and last time to skinny dip. These magical experiences have meant so much to me up here. I love this place. We have the luckiest people in the world to live here. I really do. One of my characters in Blood Mountain, whom you will meet, her name is Callie Moon, sees this land the same way I did as a child. And I loved writing her because she is uneducated and yet probably the most poetic character in my book. Isn't that an interesting combination? That you should be uneducated and yet, you know, you see everything as some sort of poetry. So I had lots of fun doing that. Guys, I would love to answer any questions that you all have about this book, about writing, about anything. Please ask me questions. And then I thought, if you would like, I could do a little reading of the first page and a quarter. I'm not going to bore you all. And I can't read too much because I will give things away. I'm trying to disguise the bad guy. And I was telling Michael Redmond, I said, the next book you'll never guess. I don't think you'll guess this one. Who knows? But you won't guess that one. You know, I'm really trying to make it a little more complicated. Does anybody have any questions about any of this?
How did you decide to write a book of fiction?
Well, you know what? Thank you for asking that. I think there's several reasons. Number one, I moved back here with my sweet husband, who says this reminds him of Austria. My husband is Michael Novak right there with the camera. And he's Austrian, so he and I love this place. It's interesting because every time I passed the Natahala Gorge on the Highlands Road, I always thought of him. Isn't that something? All through the years. He was the boyfriend of my best friend in college who passed away. So one is moving back here, Julie. Another reason is I was overwhelmed with all the stories that are up here and the folklore. And I love writing a little magical realism into everything I do. And this place is just full of it. And I had all of that in me when I was younger. And I'll tell you, there's another reason that I might as well go on and confess to. It goes beyond why I write now and why I write fiction right now, but it also is why I write this particular kind of fiction, mystery thrillers. And here it is. The world's wacky. I'm not telling you all anything you don't already know. The world's wacky. And the bad guys here don't always get caught, but they do in my books. So in my little world, I can make sure that there is some sort of justice, and that appeals to me. That makes me happy. Whenever I'm listening to the news and I get upset with anything, you know, that's out there, I found myself going back to my computer and writing a little more in Blood Mountain and feeling certainly the peace that comes with doing something you love. I think for all those reasons, I'm doing what I'm doing now. And I've been doing a form of psychology for a very long time. I have my own system of reaching peak performance on command and all that. I've been doing it for 50 years, so you kind of go, okay, what can I do now? How can I reinvent? What would I like to do? So I love words. I adore words. I know a great word, bulbous. Now, you know that's a great word, bulbous. They wouldn't let me use it in the book because they said nobody knows what that means. It's actually a color. It's kind of a yellow-green color. Isn't that nice? Like smog over Atlanta. Anyway, take that out, use it, in pressure prison conference. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and I'm loving it.
Thank you.
You write very well.
Thank you so much.
The vocabulary, it's very rich in imagery. You set the scenes, you have so much emotion, some of it very raw.
Yeah.
Very raw. And this story at times almost has me.
It is
It
what?
almost has me in tears.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and I won't do any spoilers there. I love the way you just anecdotally mentioned Vilma. Nice name.
Which is her name. I heard that at one of our neighborhood parties, didn't I, Vilma? And I said, do you mind if I use your name? I'd love to use your name, because it's just a wonderful name.
What's captivating you about the witch theme that underlies a lot of it?
Yeah. I grew up hearing about conjure people.
What kind?
Conjure.
Okay.
Conjure men and women up in the hills. I grew up hearing about several things that are not ordinarily talked about here, in our world. One is the race of Melungians.
Yes.
It's actually, we have beautiful Melungian people up here that are not usually people that we see that often. They are a mixture, by the way, if you haven't read the book yet, of African American and European and what am I leaving out? And Native American. And they're a mixture of this very incredible race that's back in the hills. And I like very much bringing forth what I've heard about my whole life. And I did hear about conjure people when I was young. These fascinating people that lived up in the woods that would give you potions for things. They would help you sleep, and they would help you do this or that. They were herbalists, really. And maybe some of them truly were delusional. I don't know. I'm sure, in that business there are those too. But we heard about them as a child running around the woods. My little friends that I ran around with had heard of them. And of course it's fascinating to children who really don't know themselves very well anyway, to hear about somebody that can know the future, That's always so interesting. But my characters don't do that. As a matter of fact, I want to say that while I absolutely am intuitive and believe and there's intuition, I always want to include people who don't believe in that. So there are logical explanations for everything, and there are magical explanations for everything. And I don't think until you get to the last line of the book that you'll understand necessarily what I'm saying to you right now.
Okay.
But it all ties together in the very last line of the book and what it means to me.
Are there Carolina wild dogs still in the area?
Yes, there are. I found one. As a matter of fact, Cully, who is the dog in this book, is a Carolina dog. And I found Cully, and he is now at a farm in Anderson, South Carolina. And he had a milk-bone dog biscuit on his head. Yeah, that's how she recognizes this dog all the time, by the milk-bone dog biscuit that's on his head. And sure, yeah. And I named him Cully because I found him on Cullowhee Mountain Road, and there's a good home for him.
And just one last question. And
Yes, ma'am.
you don't have to answer it. I don't trust Salem.
Oh, you don't, huh? All right. All right. Okay, well, read the book.
Martha, what was the question?
She said she didn't trust one of my characters, Salem. He's just too beautiful, but he is beautiful. He's beautiful.
He is truly beautiful.
Yes, he's truly beautiful.
Oh, I can't wait to meet him.
Yeah. Everybody's saying, where is he?
Thank you.
He's a good guy. All right, what else? Yes, sir.
From the initial idea to today, how long did that take?
About 2 years, really. And within those 2 years, you need to step away from it too. I can't tell you how many times I've read this book. I haven't read this particular incarnation, I'm afraid to, because I always go, I'm going to say that just a little better, or, But, you know, it takes 2 years. And you've got to get away from it for several months at a time and then go back to it to be able to see what's wrong with it. Pacing wise, you know, you can't, and when you're writing a murder mystery, you've got to be real careful. It's not just a murder mystery, a mystery thriller. You've got to keep people's attention. You've got to keep something happening all the time that puts your character in jeopardy, even if they don't know they're in jeopardy. You know, that's the best suspense there is, isn't there? You remember Alfred Hitchcock, who was a master at this? He wrote a movie called Saboteur. Y'all remember that? It's very old. I think it might have even been, am I right about this? It might have been a silent film. But anyway, there's a bomb maker. And he ties the bomb up in a little box with a great, beautiful bow on it and gives it to a little boy. And the little boy travels across town to deliver this package, which is going to blow everybody up and it's going to blow the child up. But you see, this is true suspense. The characters don't know they're in trouble, but you do. You see, that's what makes suspense. So you've got to create that for your book, but you've also got to pace yourself so that everything doesn't always happen at one time, and you have to build in the atmosphere, and you have to kind of space things out. So there's a lot of going, "Oop, that doesn't go there, that goes there, that goes, I don't know where that goes." You know, so, yes, Tom.
To that end, can you talk a little bit about the process from the inception of the idea until the publishing of the book? I mean, a lot of moving parts in this book.
Totally.
Do all those parts
Yeah.
start from the very beginning, or do they evolve as you look?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. I heard the name Blood Mountain, and the only reason that I went on with it is immediately I had a beginning and an end. And in that, because of what I do as a therapist, I also had a very strong arc from one of the characters. Very quickly, I realized there were two protagonists, not just one. And I looked up how do you write two protagonists, and every article I read said, don't do it, it's too hard. And so I decided to head right for it. Guys, one of the reasons I'm doing what I do is that I love to learn. I want to be a better writer. I'm so thrilled that you're enjoying Blood Mountain. I want the next one to be better and the next one to be better. It's my process. I really want to know how to do that, you know. I'm having a lot of fun. So that was some of how it started. You then, there are theories, you know, I love how people talk sometimes. They say, do you plot the book out or do you just wing it, you know? I think it's very important to know where you're going in a book. I do plot out, which means to me that I can change anything at any point. That while I might know where something's going, there are all sorts of questions that come up, you know, like, not just simple questions like, why is the character doing that? But questions for the writer like, if I write that, do I really want to say that? Or do I want to say something else? What? You're asking a lot of different questions. So, yes, the first draft is always, the first draft is always about narrative. Do I even have a good story here? Where's it going? The second draft, you're starting to add your characters and you're fleshing them out more and more and more. And then 500 drafts later, you may or may not be happy with the integrity of the characters you created. And so I am always not interested in stories that are shallow. I want to write real people, real characters. I think one of the reasons, going back to your question about why now, it's not just the things that I said, but it's also, I've worked in psychology my whole life, and I finally might know enough to flesh characters out so that they're very real. And I was never satisfied with doing anything that wasn't like that, full of integrity and authenticity. There are writers that I go back to and always read before I write anything, because I tend to be very, what should I say, very mental when I'm writing. I don't mean crazy with the word, although my husband might actually say yes. But I tend to get very cerebral, and I run the risk of not having depth of emotion. So I always go back and read, for example, Pat Conroy. If you've ever read Pat Conroy, I mean, he's a master at emotion. And so I say, that's kind of a benchmark for me. In terms of complicated stories, I love people like Lisa Jewell. If you all have not read The Family Upstairs and The Family Remains, call me when you've read it. It's so exciting, it's really, really thrilling. So there's some things that I do tend to read and admire very much in other writers, And I've always gone to Chris, and I walk in his bookstore, and every time I say, okay, this year, what are the hot books about North Carolina? And he always gives me a stack, and I go home and read them all. Okay, now, to finish what we were talking about. It gets busier and busier and busier and busier and busier. These last few weeks have been crazy. Now, I went with a publisher that was a terrific marketeer. I went with him deliberately because they do say that the traditional way of getting a book published is old school, and it's very, very hard. You find an agent who believes in you, and they sell it to a publisher, and you go on the road and tour and talk about it. Back in Pat Conroy's day, you were on the road for 2 years with a rebook. Isn't that right, Chris? Yeah. Now, things are changing, and they haven't thoroughly changed yet. But one of the reasons that I went with the guy I did, the publisher I did, was because, well, first of all, he read it. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. So, I'm going to read you all the first page and a quarter of this book. That's not what the book's about. So, when agents read this, and they only read no pages, only my query letter, or 3 pages, or 10 pages, or sometimes 50 pages, they never got to what the book was really, really about. It was difficult. So what happened is a good friend of mine for a year had been telling me, he's a doctor friend of mine, certainly call this friend of mine in Dallas, Texas. He's marvelous. He'll help you. I thought he was just a marketing guy. I didn't realize he was a publisher, so I called him. And I said, Ken, so-and-so, and I have a book, and he said, I'm not going to read it. He was really right up front. He said, I'll thumb through it, but I get books all the time, and it's wonderful that you are, friends with my friend, but I'll say. So I sent it to him. And the next day, he called me, and he said, oh, I'm up to chapter 14. I cannot put it down. This is so good. And I said, well, and he said, I want to publish it. It was like, you are a publisher? Oh, my gosh, I had no idea. So anyway, he called. I said, don't say you're going to publish it until you've read the whole thing, because here I'm back to, well, it's not what it seems like right now. And so he read it and called the next day and said, I finished, it's great, I want it. So that's how this happened. But it really, You know, I like doing that as a writer. I've liked doing that as an actor. I like taking a line that you would think would be shouted and dropping your voice to a whisper. I mean, all that, those surprises are fabulous, dramatic-wise, you know, to do. So I don't just want to write a book about a murderer. That's not too interesting to me. But psychologically, all these bits and pieces, yeah. Now, it has gotten very complex lately because what this man does is he does a lot of social media. I have never done social media in my life, Bill. I have never even so much as taken a selfie before now. Oh my God, social media is filled with me doing selfies. I can only say I'm so sorry. I mean, really. I did say to him, oh, well, good. Social media sounds like a great idea. Let's hire somebody to do it. And he said, no, you've got to be the one that is always on camera. And sometimes I don't have makeup on, so I show the lake. I'll show you. I'll do anything but show me without makeup on. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of the new way. So I'm going in that direction. That still means I'm going to buy from that man over there. Always. Any other questions? Yes, dear.
Who was your inspiration for Katie? How did that character evolve?
You know, I don't always, in fact, I never assign somebody. I let them develop as who they are. And Kate is certainly a little bit of me and a little bit of everybody, I think, you know. We all, at some point, don't know ourselves before we do.
How did that come about?
Yeah, isn't that great? Well, you will recognize this house on Cullowhee Mountain Road, right? Now, I didn't know anything about this house, but my darling gardener friend, Eugene Rogers, who is an old hand up here, said, I think that was my wife's great-grandfather that lived there. It didn't turn out to be that. It was a friend of his family. There was a man there named Marion Rogers, who was a preacher, and he was an itinerant preacher. He never married, never had kids, and that was his house. This house I used as Callie Moon's house. This is my inspiration, this location. So I took the picture, and I had an idea that I wanted kind of a spooky cover, and the designer first sent me some designs, and they looked like a horror font, you know, with the dripping blood and things like that. And yes, I have several friends here. I showed this picture, and they went, no. And I wrote back and I said, thank you so much for this, but this isn't a horror book. This is a mystery book. It's a mystery thriller. It's not horror. By the way, I am really funny about that. I don't tend to like gore, so there is a minimum of any kind of gore, and all the animals are fine. Fine. Because I want you to trust me on that. You'll never have anything happening to the animals in my books. I may kill husbands. And that's a joke for my book. I wrote something a while back and I had to kill the husband. And my editor at the time called me and she said, I'm so upset that you killed the dog. And Michael said, what about the husband? And she said, oh, that was all right. That had to happen. He's never gotten over that one. So that was a joke. So the next design that they sent me was this. And I think it's perfectly gorgeous. And it goes all the way around the back. I mean, it's just, I couldn't have asked for more. She really nailed it. Would you all like to hear a little bit of this? Yeah. All right. Oh, I have my glasses now. All right. I'm just going to read the first part of it. Again, if I read into the body of it, I might give something away, and I don't want to do that. So, here's what the book is not about. I don't know what else to say here. All right. Chapter 1. Her mother saw her struggling to swim in her lane at the community pool. It was hard for a serious swimmer. There were a lot of splashing children getting in their last hurrah before their mothers took them home. Beth Talmadge had just reached the wall at the deep end, clung on and waved. Her mother waved back. She saw Beth rub her eyes as they stung into the chlorine and the garish night lights that shone directly on the water before she streamlined into her lane again. Swimming was Beth's sport of choice, and she needed the workout. She's Deloitte and Massey's youngest and exec. Isn't that something? We're so proud of her, her mother told her young friend who was busy toweling off her 7-year-old. What her mother didn't tell her friend was that she was there to protect her daughter from a killer. She would protect her with her life if it came to that. But Beth resented all the hovering and put up with it. Her mother told her she was free to do as she pleased at work. Outside of that, she was going to keep a watchful eye. The lane was almost empty now. She saw Beth's stroke lengthen, and she could tell that she was relaxing into her swim for the first time. She paid little attention to the shadow when it swam beneath her daughter. Only in retrospect did she scream, "Get out! Get out! Get out! Get away! Get out now!" But then, of course, it was too late. She didn't feel that Beth felt the slash when it came. She'd just gotten to the shallow end and stood, a mystified look on her face as she regarded her mother and the water turning black around her. Her mother, incredulous, but reacting to the silent alarm, watched Beth as she tried to speak. Instead of words, there came a gurgling of blood, mucus, chlorine, and air. Her mother, fully clothed, plunged into the water then, but others were now in the water too and held her back. What was Beth trying to say? Goodbye? Sorry for dying? I love you. Beth's last undelivered message tortured her mother's forlorn nights. Whatever her daughter had to say, it sank beneath the dark water with the rest of her and was gone. So, there we go.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. Thank you so much. I don't know where we are time-wise. You know, you really all ought to cut me off if this is the time to be cut off. And for you all who want me to keep going, please ask more questions. Yes, darling.
This is set on the island, Cashiers Plateau, right?
Yes, it is. It starts in New York, so don't let that dissuade
Well,
you.
that's not my question.
But
Since
it
you're a
is,
native
yeah,
here.
it's set here.
What's the difference between a hollow and a cove?
A what?
Hollow and a cove, or holler and a cove?
A holler and a cove?
Well, it's hollow, but it comes out holler.
Yeah, a holler,
And
yeah.
out in a holler, and then cove, and is there a...
Well, I don't know whether there is an
I'm a
actual...
retired geography professor.
Are you? Yeah. You know, I think of coves, and perhaps it's because I'm in one on a lake. And that's where I always think of coves. A holler, though, is to me a valley between mountains. Now, I don't know whether that is geographically correct. You will have to come over and tell me. But that's what it means to me.
Okay. So a cove is kind of like off a valley.
Yeah, well, I'm in a cove, thank God. And I say thank God because I think where we are is halfway down a mountain and in a kind of a little area. that is very code-like, and Helene didn't do as much damage as it could have done, you know, thank God. We did have kind of a tornado that took off earlier this year, though, and took our dock out into the middle of the lake with our boat attached. That was nice and dramatic. So, it didn't protect us then, being in the cove. But at least the boat was still in the cove, and that was pretty good. Any other questions, guys? You know, I want to say again that throughout this whole process, it has been so fun. It's fun to write. It's fun to express yourself on the page. It's fun to find mistakes and correct them. It's fun to learn how to do things better and better. And now that I am here and promoting this book, I have never felt such support in my life, and I've always felt supported here. I always said the Highlands Plateau kind of, the ground kind of rose up to greet you. You know, it's just such a friendly, lovely place, and the people are so nice. But guys, thank you so much, because our being number 20, coming from nothing to something on the Amazon Hot Best New Releases, whatever the words are, is all you're doing. So, for that, I salute you. Yes, Dawn?
Martha, do you have an idea for your next book?
I do indeed. It's the working title is Night Frost Lane. Michael Redmond said it was very spooky, and you bet it is. It is. It's very spooky. But I'm in the process of trying to plot it out and trying to figure out where I'm giving too much away too soon. You know, right until the very end, and I can't tell you the specific bits, but that one right there helped. I can tell you the one that you found. Yes, I can say that. She said, so my friend Julia was one of my readers. Thank you so much, all of you all that have been readers for me. But Julia said, are you aware you have your character putting on a coat you did two pages ago as well? You know, so, and I never saw it, you know. But I'll tell you why that's so important. It's so important because when you do catch something like that, you come right out of the fantasy. You come out of the bubble. So it's really important not to have mistakes in your book, grammatical or otherwise. And so I thank you so much. I mean, it was late in the game when you found that too, you know, and it was just horrific. It was like, oh! But there was another one that I found finally, and everybody missed, and I can't tell you what that is because I'd give it away. I'd give away the bad guy. All right. Anything else, guys? Thank you so much for having me today, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Chris, and carrying the book. Guys, we have 2 hardbacks over there and a whole bunch of paperbacks. And help yourselves to whatever. And thank you so much for being my friend. Appreciate it.
Are you going to have to go on the road and do something?
I am not going to have to go on the road right now. Road trips cost a lot of money. They really do. Somebody told me $15,000 to $20,000, and I hadn't been invited anywhere, so I might as well stay home and do it on social media. And whenever I get really annoyed and going, oh, I gotta do one of these cat videos, I think, well, I could be in Poughkeepsie or someplace, so I'm glad to just be home doing that. Thank you all very much for not being tired of seeing us.
Yeah, I sent it out.